What's going on, everybody? Off the Mic Sports Network here. Another edition of Off the Top Rope. So AEW Full Gear is wrapped up. Listen, I'll be pretty blunt and honest with you guys. This was not a good pay-per-view. This was not a good pay-per-view. Don't let the sickos tell you otherwise. This was not a good show. There was a lot of wrestling on the shows, a couple of very good matches here and there, and a lot of blood and a lot of hardcore indie mud show uh nonsense that happened throughout the show. And that's really what I want to hammer home here. So listen, we had a really great tag team match between between FTR and Brodito. That was honestly one of the better tag team matches I've seen this year. I mean, we had a casino gauntlet match that meant absolutely nothing, only as an exercise to just give Ricochet a championship because he's a geek. Who cares? But then we got to the middle portion of this show where I was just wondering what in the fuck AEW was doing. Because show started, you had the weird thing where they did this at the last show where the pre-show bled into the main show. Pac beat Darby Allin. You had the Timeless Love Bombs. Tony Storm and Mina Shirakawa win their four-way tag. So now they get to pick their stipulation for their tag team tournament match. Like I said, the FTR match and Brodito, which was unbelievable. One of my favorite matches in the entire night. Ricochet. But then we get to the middle portion of this show. Kyle O'Reilly faces Jon Moxley in a no-holds-barred match that had a fork involved. We had forks going to nipples, by the way, which I don't understand. Forks going to heads. And just a bunch of just indie mud show plunder, which comes with every Jon Moxley match. He feels like he needs to bleed. It's unbelievable. And then we followed that up with Mark Briscoe and Kyle Fletcher, no DQ for the TNT title that went 25 minutes, had multiple table bumps. We had thumbtacks. We had a screwdriver. If I'm missing something, let me know if I'm doing something in the comments. But we had a bunch of nonsense that happened. So blood was all over the place in those two matches. And then we get to the main event where Samoa Joe and Adam Page are inside of a steel cage 10 days, by the way, after we did Blood and Guts. And so we had three instances on this show on a 9-match main show. So a third of this card was blood and hardcore spots and weapons and violence. And I understand that, AEW is the alternative. But can we talk about moderation with this place? 10 days ago, you had two 45-minute double steel cage matches with weapons where you had people bleeding in the first 5 minutes. Samoa Joe's blood was painted over the canvas at the end of the show. It almost took away from, Swerve's return and him sort of aligning with Hangman Adam Page. There was the indie stuff on this show is really what is going, and the blood and the violence, which is really just, stuck with AEW, which, I guess you could say is somewhat of their identity. But when you do this stuff as much as AEW does, like they do it on free television, they do it on Collision, they do it on their pay-per-views, they do it on Dynamite, they do it all over the place. When you don't use moderation with these things mean less and less. And when you literally saw this 10 days ago with both blood and guts matches, and on 3 separate instances, like I said, 30% of your show on this show is blood, literally blood and guts. That's literally what it is. What am I supposed to believe? You can't just be throwing out no DQ matches and, stip matches and because every time I see thumbtacks, it's just okay, cool. I've seen that 1,000 times before. And my problem with this company sometimes is that when I used to watch wrestling growing up and I'd see these violent level spots, I'd be like, oh, cool. I don't usually see that. Now when I see fire or a fiery table, or if I see a thumbtack spot, or if I see a screwdriver gets jabbed into somebody's head, or a fork, or all this other stuff, it's happened so many fucking times that I'm just prone to just, it's commonplace. It's like seeing a rest hold. That's really what it is. And you want to make these moments in wrestling feel special. So when you do it multiple times on the same show and in back-to-back matches in this case, Like, we saw blood in back-to-back matches, and then we had a steel cage match in the main event. When you see that type of, like, violence and, depravity and, whatever you want to call it, it makes it be less meaningful. And that's the issue with this company is they just do spots for cheap reactions. And to me, when wrestling is at its best is when you tell a story and then you build to these matches, sometimes with a stipulation that has some involvement to the story, that when you do some of this crazy level shit, it means something and you have an emotional connection to this. I've just programmed myself into my mind when I watch these matches and watch some of these shows that none of this means anything. Like, even Hangman and Joe, yeah, it was a cage match, but yeah, they literally were kind of feuding since the last pay-per-view when Joe turned on Hangman. I mean, Briscoe and Kyle Fletcher kind of have had a little bit of a feud, but even then, it was just kind of weird that, hey, we're throwing each other through tables just to, for over the TNT title. Kyle Fletcher or Kyle O'Reilly and John Moxley, why did that need to be no holds barred? Like, they literally were in it stemmed off of what happened in Blood and Guts. We literally saw it 10 days ago. Like, these matches don't rise to the point of you need weapon spots and you need blood and you need, crazy, just violent, nonsensical crap. And I was saying I forgot what match it was during. I think it might have been during the O'Reilly and Moxley match, which is not surprising because John Moxley just feels the need to do something crazy, batshit insane that just seems ultimately unnecessary to prove a point. Because he wouldn't be able to get away with that in WWE. And that's not the reputation you want as AEW. You want to be considered the alternative, but you also have to be like, okay, if you're in a writer's room, and this is where I think Tony Khan has kind of failed his talent will do whatever the fuck they want. And Tony is just like, oh, cool. We can do that. Sure. I'm just a mark. I don't care. Go do what you want. I've got all this money to fund it in. We'll do it, whatever. Now, if he actually had some moderation and you actually focused a lot of it on narratives to build to these type of matches that you consistently put on pay-per-views, then it would mean something more emotionally to a lot of your audience that aren't your sickos. And you could potentially, rise to the level of what you were doing storyline and creative wise back when Cody Rhodes was there and CM Punk was there. The problem is you don't know any better. So you just do whatever the fuck you want. You have your guys bleed all over the place. You have them do all these weapon shit every single month. And it's become to the point, like I said, it's like I'm watching a basic wrestling match and I'm looking at a rest hold when a guy bleeds. That's not what it should be. Like, when somebody gets busted up, like, WWE got so much shit for this in the Vince McMahon era when they went to PG, because nobody bled. But when somebody bled, it meant something. So why can't it be that way? I understand it's more of an edgy and an adult shit, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it every fucking show or every fucking match. And to have 30% of your show hardcore, blood, all these crazy spots, that doesn't look good. So if I have a major complaint about the show itself, Full Gear, is that you've got to stop resorting to this indie-rific crap. It's gotten to a point where it's just like, it's part of your identity, but at the same point, it also shows that that's all you can dip into. You can't tell a compelling story, so let's just resort to stabbing people. Let's resort to drowning people and suffocating people and all this other shit. Like, why can't we get to something like a feud like Hangman and Swerve where, hey, they got to violence, they hated each other, so they wanted to kill each other. It feels like now they're just, hey, we're just doing shit to do shit. And that's not what it should be. So that's my opinion on this show overall. Like I said, I thought the tag team match was great. I thought the women's championship match was great. I thought the closing match, not really, it wasn't maybe the greatest match, but the shocking ending. And then, obviously going off the air with Swerve returning and seemingly, being shoulder to shoulder which was a great image with him and Hangman, considering, they seemingly have squashed their beef going into when Hangman won the championship, and now Hangman's not the champion when Swerve comes back. So it's very interesting. So, like I said, it wasn't the greatest show. It could have been a lot better if they wouldn't have resorted to some of these same tactics that they've resorted to on a lot of these shows. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.